Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baywatch podcast, where I watch every episode of the hit 80s/90s show, Baywatch. Let's get started. Forever and always, I'm always here. Hello, guys. I'm sorry that I've been away for a long time. I've been under the weather and also have been going to birthday parties and hanging out with my family. I would like to say Happy Father's Day to anyone who is listening to the podcast and watching the videos here on YouTube. If you are a father, Happy Father's Day. And I also want to extend a happy Pride Month because June is fastly ending. And I wish that I could sit here and talk about a gay character from Baywatch, but unfortunately, as far as I know so far, there isn't any. So, happy Pride to the LGBTQ community, a community that I myself am a part of and proud to be a part of. So let's dive into the craziness that was this episode. There have been some doozies this season so far. This is not the most bizarre, but it's kind of up there. And when I get done with this season, I will be ranking every episode to see which one was the worst and which one wasn't so bad. Haven't decided where to put this one. So let's dive in. This is a Jill-centered episode. So if those of you who haven't seen the show in years and can't remember who Jill is, don't feel bad. I was talking to my friend about about Baywatch, and she couldn't remember who Jill was either. This episode is called The Drowning Pool, which is a really weird episode title. This episode was titled The Drowning Pool, and the air date was November 3rd, 1989. We start off this episode, of course, with Jill, who is coming to her lifeguard tower, and she wakes up a homeless man named Henry. She wakes him up with a prune Danish and a cup of coffee. Yuck on the prune Danish. And apparently now it's okay for homeless guys to sleep in front of the lifeguard tower, unlike Eddie, who got in trouble for sleeping in one in the second episode. So Jill opens up her lifeguard tower and notices that an older couple is already on the beach, and the husband is going into the water with a flotation device that is shaped kind of like a tire. And she has one of those handheld VHS video recorders. And let me tell you about those. And don't say I've never educated you about anything. This is the most 80s/90s thing you'll ever see on Baywatch so far, because way back when, these cameras were really hard to hold for long periods of time. Basically, you had it on your shoulder, and you had to squint your eye to look through the viewfinder. And you had to make sure that your tape was at least 4 hours long and on the SP, which was the longest lasting tape you could have. And I always loved that because I somehow got into the camera, got on the VHS, and was able to be on television. And of course, what kid wouldn't love that? Eventually, in the 90s, they got tripods, and you were able to put it on the tripod, and it was able to sit there and autofocus on whoever was in the vicinity of the camera. As well, it would pick up auto and everything. And today, people use their phones and record videos and things, but I don't understand why. It's like, if way back when you basically filmed your daughter's or son's first steps on a VHS, you would have that for life. If you film it on your phone, one false move, you can accidentally delete it and there's no way to get it back on some phones. So I always loved having home movies on VHS. It feels nostalgic when I pop them in because I can look at it and know that I had happy times. I had my brother's first birthday on VHS and I love watching that because he was so cute. Anyway, there's the history of VHS video recorders for those in this generation that didn't have a clue. So, Jill is completely distracted by this couple. And she thinks it's cute that they want to, that it's the guy's first time in the ocean, but he's not allowed to have this sort of flotation device, I guess. That's a rule. And she's trying to get him to get it off and to get out of the ocean. Meanwhile, we're introduced to Derek, his mother, his father, whose name I don't know, his mother, whose name I don't know, it doesn't really matter, and his cousin, Chuck. Derek is played by future Reba star, Reba McEntire's sitcom, Christopher Rich. He played her ex-husband who knocked up his dental hygienist, Barbara Jean. Christopher Rich has had a tendency to play characters that were jackasses from the moment you met them. I don't have to convince you because his character on Reba was a complete and total jackass. The knocking up his dental hygienist thing kind of, seals the deal there. But in this one, he doesn't actually play a jackass, but they try to make you think he is one. Apparently he knows Trevor, who's finally in this episode. The Australian guy. And he apparently knows them because they go to his country club on the beach that he's the lifeguard at. But don't expect him to be around very long. So the father decides he wants to go swimming. And even though the wife, his nephew, and his son all say it's a bad idea because he just had open heart surgery, which we can see when he takes off his shirt and the line is through his chest where it's obviously happened, but he decides to go swimming anyway because he wants to stay active. So he goes off with a bathing cap and decides to go swimming. Jill is distracted by these people and doesn't see him go in the water. She also, unfortunately, doesn't see that there is a scuba diver in the water waiting in the wings to drown this poor old man. Yes, I kid you not. On Baywatch, we can't have a simple drowning episode. We can't sit through an episode where a lifeguard actually goes through the trauma of if a person actually drowns, how do they feel about that? No, it has to be a murder plot. It can't be your standard run-of-the-mill drowning because that's not the type of show Baywatch wants to be. And they don't see this diver, at all. And he's, waiting in the wings for this old man to come swimming by him so he can pull him down under the water, which is exactly what happens. A bystander who just so happens to be on the beach is the one that actually sees the guy drowning, because he comes up and he's flaying his arms and he sees it. And Jill is still distracted by the couple with the VHS recorder. So finally she realizes what's going on. She tells the guy, she asks him his name. He says, "My name is Fred." She says, "Fred, go to my lifeguard tower, get the radio, and call for backup." Fred goes, calls for backup, then goes back to the end of the ocean. Jill is diving in, and this is where the opening comes from when you see her name. And she's diving in the water in slow motion. This is the stock footage that they use for the opening from this episode. Just a little tidbit I thought you'd like to know. Anyway, so she's diving underneath the water. She's trying to find him. 1 minute he's in front of her, and then he's gone. She doesn't know where he is. She can't find him. And Fred's like, behind you, he's behind you, to the left, he's behind you. And sure enough, he pops up behind her. And she doesn't know how, but she drags him there. Eventually, Trevor overhears the commotion because now there's a sea of extras on the beach to watch this, even though there was no one there before. They're all watching this event unfold, and Trevor gets off his lifeguard tower and just runs over there, and Jill is bringing him out, and she's pushing on his stomach, and all the lifeguards are there helping her. Trevor sees who it is, goes to the country club, gets Derek out of the steam room, tells him it's his father, and that's the last time we see him. He does not appear for the rest of the duration of the episode. I don't know why. Trevor, that is. We never see Trevor for the rest of this episode. So, an ambulance shows up. He's put into the back of an ambulance. Derek doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know if he should go with them, and Mitch basically pretty much yells at him and tells him to get into the ambulance. And I'm not even sure if Mitch knows if that's his father, because that was never established in the scene. But he's just like, get in the ambulance, and he does. He goes. So they learn at headquarters that he's been pronounced dead. The old man is dead. Derek's father is dead. So Jill is feeling really sad, and Mitch basically tells her it's okay, it happens to the best of us. Ever so often this happens. And Jill says, I'm fine with it. Cue montage of Jill walking off into the sunset, upset over this man drowning. And it's really sad, and the music is all somber and sad, and it's almost like it's the only montage, I think, in the whole episode. Actually, no, I take that back. There is another montage. We'll get to it in a minute. So, before Jill leaves after this montage, she goes to her locker to get her clothes, I guess, and Shawnee's there. And even though, in the pilot movie and even in the second episode, she didn't want to work with Shawnee, and she didn't like her, suddenly they're friends. I guess. And Shawnee's all like, why don't we go to my house and we can rent old movies and pig out on popcorn? And Jill goes, I know what you're trying to do, I know what everyone's trying to do, and I'm fine, and I just want to be alone. So the next day, Mitch and Deathglare, aka Craig, are talking about Jill openly in the hallway where everyone can hear them. And as they're talking about Jill and wondering if she's going to get over this, there's an extra that comes in behind them, scratching his ass. I kid you not. Isn't it amazing what HD Remastered can do? So, they're talking about Jill, and Shawnee comes out of the changing room. She goes, well, if you're looking for Jill, she's already in your office, Mitch. And then they stop like they're waiting, and they're looking towards the camera like they're waiting for the director to yell, cut. And this extra comes through the scene like he looks like he's talking to himself. It's really weird. So then we cut to Mitch's office. Jill's in there, and she is like, abundance of paper, and she's been going over her report, and she doesn't understand how he could have been in front of her and then suddenly he was behind her. So she's thinking it's not your stereotypical drowning, because of course it's Baywatch. Of course it's not. So Jill is convinced there's more to the story, but Mitch says he had open heart surgery, he had a heart attack, case closed. Jill says she's going to find out otherwise and walks away. Mitch begins looking at her notes and realizes maybe she's right. she decides to go to Derek's house, which just so happens to be not that far from headquarters and is on the beach. And they just so happen to have a pool. Get it? Drowning pool. No, I still don't get it. They have flamingos on stone pillars. I didn't get that either. And Derek's acting all suspicious, because I guess the director told him to. And he's like, why do you want to know what happened to my father? It was just an accident. What's the big deal? This, that, and the other. And, you know, it is one of those moments where you think he could be the killer. Yeah. So just then, his mother and his cousin Chuck come down the stairs, and the mother is wearing the most ugliest black hat I have ever seen in my whole entire life. Why she's wearing it, I don't know. They apparently just buried her husband, so I guess it's a mourning hat. And she goes, what is the little life killer doing here? We're suing you because it's your fault that my husband has died. Actually, it's the scuba diver's fault, or if this was real life, it's the water's fault. And honestly, this would probably be laughed out of court due to the fact that the guy had open heart surgery, knew the risks when he went into the water, so they wouldn't get any compensation. Thank you, Law & Order SVU, for me knowing that. Anyway, so when the mom says this, Jill gets upset and runs out of the house. Later on, she has become so obsessed with this that she has contacted the couple who is vacationing and asked them for all their VHS tapes of their vacation. Apparently they've sent her every single one except for the one at Baywatch. And she has even come up with a miniature model to reenact what happened that morning. I mean, she is so, on the ball. So Derek randomly shows up at headquarters and says, I wanted to apologize about my mom. We're not going to sue you. We changed her mind. I changed her mind. And then he asks her to hang out. They go to his house and they talk for a little bit, and then there's a montage of them hanging out together all night. And Jill looks out at the water and says, it's so beautiful at night because there's nothing there. And it's like, okay. And they have sex in front of the fireplace. The next day, Jill opens up her tower again and finds Henry, the homeless guy, sleeping in front of her tower, only this time he's got a wetsuit. Henry says that it washed up on shore and he just put it on. And Jill has the audacity to say, you mean from the ocean? No, Jill, from the sky. So, the next night, Jill spends some more time with Derek, and Goner decides to go over to Mitch's house, because apparently he's on the case now, with some pizza, and he basically tells Mitch that they narrowed down the search for the wetsuits and find out that the wetsuit that Henry found is in fact Derek's wetsuit. The next day he's interrogated and Jill is all defending him. Derek must have a really great dick. Just saying. Anyway, she's suddenly on Team Derek and is saying it can't possibly be his, and he basically says that his wetsuit and scuba gear had been stolen. Jill and Mitch decide to dive under the water to look for the oxygen tank that the scuba diver would have had to have for the wetsuit. And due to plot conveniences, of course they find it. They could not see a floating suitcase full of money in the previous episode, but they find this freaking oxygen tank in a matter of minutes, and Goner won't go in the water because apparently he doesn't like it. He doesn't want to touch it, he doesn't want to be in it, he doesn't want to be anywhere near it. And it's like, okay, you do you. So it looks like all arrows are pointed to Derek. The evidence seems to be stacking up. But Derek just tells Mitch and Goner that all they have is wet assumptions. Dun-dun-dun! Get it? Wetsuit. Assumptions. Oh, Baywatch, you clever, clever show. So, Jill is all Team Derek, and I guess the power of the penis compels her because, for the simple fact of the matter is, even though the evidence is stacking up against Derek, she refuses to believe that he's the killer. The couple end up coming by and dropping off their last VHS tape, which happens to be the one that she needs. She puts it in her bag, and Craig basically tells her, "You need to be careful, Jill. He could be the killer, you know." And she goes, "I don't think so." And she goes, if I get poisoned at all tonight, it's because Derek is making barbecue." And she leaves to go to his house again. While there, he asks if she has matches because, of course, living in a big house full of all kinds of stuff, this rich dude does not have matches laying around. So Jill's going through her purse to try to find the matches when Derek comes across the VHS tape. At this point, he firmly believes that Jill believes that he's the killer. So he's like, "Let's watch this tape. It has clues on it as to who killed my father, and you think it's me, and I want to prove to you that it's not, so let's watch it." They stick it in the VCR, which is the equipment you needed to play a VHS tape. Ask your grandparents. Anyway, they put it in, and after fast forwarding through the annoying stuff, they realize all at once that it wasn't Derek. It was Derek's cousin, Chuck. Dun dun dun! And Chuck just so happens to be there. Once they figure it out, Chuck decides to hit a glass pitcher over Derek's head. And now, here's a little quiz for you guys. What does Jill do next? Does Jill try to run upstairs, barricade herself in a room, and call 911 and wait until they show up so that Chuck won't come and get her? Or does she B, run out of the house and jump in the ocean? If you picked A, then you are a smart person. If you picked B, then you know your Baywatch, because B is exactly what she did. She literally runs out of the house and runs towards the ocean. What was she hoping for? A dolphin would come by and be able to take her back to shore? I'm sorry, but I think at this point, sweetie, Flipper is retired. So of course, Chuck goes after her and is trying to run after her, well, swim after her, and he's wearing all these really ugly clothes. Like, he's wearing jeans, which I don't think you can swim in jeans. So you can tell the actor is having like a hard time trying to swim after her. At one point, he pretends like he's drowning. Jill, feeling the lifeguard in her, goes and tries to save him, and he tries to punch her and drown her in the water the same way he drowned his uncle, Derek's father. And eventually, Jill gets the upper hand and starts punching him. And I guess Derek calls Mitch and Goner because they show up and they save her just in time. And Goner ends up going into the water, and Jill says, "Goner, you got over your phobia, you're in the water." And he looks down and goes, "Oh man." So then the truth is revealed. And from what I have gathered and what I understand, because it's kind of a little vague, apparently Chuck worked at Derek's father's company, and apparently once the old man died, the company would go to Derek, because apparently the woman that the father is married to is actually Derek's stepmother and not his actual mother. So it wouldn't, none of the money would go to her. It would go to his son, because him and Derek have become close in the last several weeks or so, after his open heart surgery. So Chuck thought if he killed his uncle and then framed his cousin for it, he would be able to keep his job and inherit the company, being the next default person in line for the company. And I don't think the stepmother had anything to do with it, although I would think so. So Jill's gloating and telling Mitch, "I told you so. I told you Derek wasn't the killer. Was I right or was I not?" Derek even sends her flowers and basically tells Mitch in the card, "I told you so." But believe me, it doesn't matter because we'll never see Derek again. Him and Jill were like ships passing in the night. I got a million beach puns, believe me. So that's the episode, guys. To recap, Jill basically thinks that she's caused the death of a drowning victim, but it turns out he was actually murdered. And she solves the murder, kinda, sort of. And all is well and comes to a happy end. Hobie was not in this episode, and there was no reason for his absence, not even explained at all. And Captain Thorpe was not in this episode, thank you. 80s moments. Like I said before, would have to have been the VHS video recorder. And Derek wears this really ugly sweater that he looks like he stole from Mrs. Voorhees, only the difference between the two is that they have anchors on his sweater. And it's like, you're on a beach, why would you be wearing a sweater? I just don't get it. It was so ugly. And all Chuck's outfits were like geeky, like suspenders and stuff and glasses. He just looked like your standard geek of the 80s. The fashion sense of the stepmother, just, if I was her, instead of, suing Jill for letting her husband die, I would sue the wardrobe department. Because I really don't understand what they were trying to do with this woman. But this episode was a vast improvement from some of the other ones, and because I had family visiting me over the weekend, and I was going to a family get-together for a birthday party, my niece just turned 5, I have not been able to binge watch the episodes, but I'm going to try to the rest of this week, so be prepared for more episodes coming your way. And no matter what, I am bound and determined to finish this series, because forever and always, I'm always here. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.